There's a quiet exodus happening, not of headlines or protests, just everyday people quietly leaving the country they once called home. Not because they hate America, but because they finally accepted something harder, that America never really loved them back. This isn't about politics. It's not red versus blue. It's about rent that eats half a paycheck, medical bills that haunt you for years, gunshots that echo outside your window, and a kind of loneliness that no amount of patriotism can fill. For many, leaving the United States wasn't an act of betrayal. It was an act of survival. They weren't fleeing freedom. They were searching for it. And in the unlikeliest corners of the world, from Portugal to Thailand to Mexico, they began to heal, literally. Chronic illnesses improved, stress levels dropped, and maybe most surprisingly, they started to feel human again. This video is a collection of those voices, not experts, not celebrities, just ordinary Americans with extraordinary clarity, telling us what it feels like to give up on the American dream because the dream gave up on them first. But before we dive in, please like the video so it reaches more people who need to hear these stories. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. It helps us beat the algorithm and keep making honest, human-centered content like this.
Why I'm so happy I left America for Australia. This reason makes me happy every single day is that I can go out, I can get coffee, get food, go wherever, and the tax is included. And of course, I don't have to worry about a tip, which makes it even better, but the tax is included in the price. How amazing.
All right, y'all, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. If you are living in America and you are struggling to make ends meet, you may want to consider leaving America. If you are living in America and you are not able to afford health insurance, you're afraid of going to the doctor because you are terrified of what your bill is going to look like, you may want to consider leaving America. If you find that you have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet, you may want to consider leaving America. If you are a parent and you're paying pretty much what it costs to cover a mortgage for childcare, you may want to consider leaving America. If you are tired of the grind, the hustle, and the bustle, and you just truly desire to live a simpler life and without having to work so hard, you may want to consider leaving America. Not too long ago, I relocated to Bangkok, Thailand with my family, and it's so incredible because now I'm able to truly experience what it's like to live a soft life. So for a lot of people, living a soft life is like, for them, like driving a luxury car, designer bags, all that. For me, that's not what living a soft life is about. Okay, for me, living a soft life is being able to work significantly less, being able to, get up later, or just being able to enjoy the things that bring me joy, the things that I'm passionate about, rather than grinding and hustling all the time. I've truly been able to just slow down. I used to be on the hustle grind mode all the time, and that's okay. There are seasons in life for that, or there are seasons for that, but it's not sustainable to do that 24/7. You need to rest. You need to sit down, okay? And if you find that you cannot sit down living in America, you need to leave. And if you're going to say, oh, well, if I can't make ends meet, all of that stuff, how am I going to possibly leave America? Let me tell you, it is so possible. You just have to sit down with pen and paper, do the math, okay? Sometimes we think things are far-fetched because we haven't really truly sat down and did the math. And you may just be surprised how doable it may be for you to leave the US. By the time you turn around and you sell all the junk in your house that you don't even use anyway, you may be able to just come up with the funds to buy that ticket, secure that new home in another country. And I'll probably do another video. Let me know if you want me to do a series on this, but I will probably do another video about the most affordable and safe, countries that are deemed safe for women or for families and all of that jazz, okay? But yeah, if you are watching this video, this is probably your sign to move abroad.
Let's talk about this. Why are women wanting to leave America? And hi, if you're new here, my name is Kara. I'm a digital nomad mom and I help people live and travel abroad. I offer consultations for people who want to live abroad, and this is something I keep seeing. And side note, if you want to book a session with me, just click my profile and go to my link. So why are women wanting to leave the US over men? In a recent poll, 40% of women wanted to leave the US versus 20% of men. But why is that? And it really got me thinking. It's because of much of what's happening in the US isn't affecting men. Let me explain. There aren't any laws being made about their bodies. As of last month, at least 24 states in the United States have some sort of ban or restrictions coming. This impacts women. Inflation is currently at an all-time high. And many women now are not only just working, but they're also mothers. We have no protected paid maternity leave that is universal. Instead, it is dependent upon your employer. And in many countries, women are given up to a year of paid maternity leave. We don't have any subsidized childcare. The average cost of childcare in the US is $14,760 annually, which is $1,230 monthly, which means you are paying rent per child just so that you can go to work. So now many women are forced to choose between their careers and childcare. And if they choose the latter, you are now dependent upon your husband for livelihood. And for the women who want to be stay-at-home moms, inflation is so bad right now, and the cost of living is so high, they can't. Mothers are often the ones fearing for their child's safety when they're going to school, because women are kin keepers. The definition of a kin keeper is a social role, usually assumed by women to protect and promote relationships in between the family, meaning we carry the mental load of the family. 9 times out of 10, we're making the doctor's appointments. We're packing the school lunches. We're the ones involved with the PTAs. In summary, our roles as women have changed dramatically in the past 50 years with a lot more responsibility than our counterparts. And that is why we are seeking a soft life. But unfortunately, a soft life is not very accessible in the US. We want to spend more time with our families. We want more time for ourselves and the things that make us happy. We want to know we can send our children to school safely and have access to nutritious food for them, which is why women are at the forefront of this movement, trying to convince their husband to leave.
Why I left the US and will never go back there. The biggest reason why I will not be returning to live in the US is because it is a failed society. I don't think that Americans realize that the way that they live is not actually normal when you compare it to the rest of the world. It's not normal to not have healthcare. It's not normal to be in crippling amounts of debt from going to school or going to a hospital. It's not normal to be afraid of gun violence, for there to be a threat of gun violence in your school. It doesn't matter if it's a developed country or an underdeveloped country. It's not normal to only have 2 choices when it comes to politics and who runs your country. It's not normal to have a 79% literacy rate and half the country cannot read above a 5th grade level. My family and I immigrated to the United States when I was 5 years old. And in that time, my mom worked herself to the bone. We barely saw our mother because she was always at work. She never had time for herself. She's barely gone on vacation. Her life has literally centered around work for the last 25 years. And so my mom essentially sacrificed her life and her happiness in order to work. And when I returned to the US after living in Europe for 3.5 years, all I was doing was working. I would wake up super early in the morning, commute for 1 hour, go to work for 8 hours, commute for another hour, and then I would have 2 hours to myself before I had to go to bed in order to do the same thing in the morning again. All for 2 weeks of vacation time. And I want you guys to know that this is not normal. In some countries, the minimum that an employee will get off of work is 6 weeks. In some countries, women get years off to spend with their newborn child. After my mom gave birth to my brother, she was back at work after 2 weeks. When I was going to school in the US, I constantly had anxiety that our school was going to be shot up. And this is not normal. I want you guys to understand it, because when I was talking to my friends who also went to school in the US, they said the exact same thing, that they always had anxiety that someone would come into the school and shoot it up. And so I essentially chose peace when I decided to leave the US. I do not feel any sort of allegiance to this country because the US does not have allegiance to me as a Black woman. Black women are overwhelmingly more prone to experiencing poverty than any other ethnic group in the United States. Black women are also more likely to die in childbirth in the United States. It has one of the highest maternal mortality rates. And so why should I choose to work myself to the bone for decades to get nothing in return, to not even be able to retire comfortably for a country that doesn't care about me?
I don't normally talk about this a lot, but a big reason for me wanting to leave the States and now living in Spain comes from the US politics and the way our government is running the US. It's like every day I see something new come out in the news of like something against women's rights, something against women reproductive rights, something against freedom of speech, and now they're trying to ban TikTok, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the whole reason why I wanted to start this TikTok account was because I wanted to share my experience and what I love about Spain to help you guys, people in the US or from elsewhere, to plan their best Spain trip, to learn that they can move abroad and, you know, do what makes them happy. And all my American followers, I love you so much. I don't want you to leave this app. It is nothing without you guys, but if they somehow end up getting rid of it, I want you guys to know that you can follow me on Instagram, YouTube. It's all the same username, Betty Abroad with 2 Ds at the end. Because at the end of the day, I want to keep giving you guys the best recs, the best places to see in Madrid, and just to really show you guys that you can live the life you want to live. Love you guys.
I've probably started recording this video like 5 times and stopped because it's just never quite what I want to say, but this is the reason why we have decided to leave the United States. Look, the sun is setting. My family and I are moving away from the United States and moving to Portugal in 8 days. So coming up very soon here. And this was a 1.5-year process in the making, but ultimately what made the decision like, yeah, we're gonna move to Portugal. It's always political. There's always some part of it that's political, and I don't think necessarily that this should be political, but it is. And a big reason why we are leaving is because of school shootings and gun violence in the United States. And again, part of the reason I didn't want to make this video is because I will inevitably have somebody in my comments be like, well, there's violence in Portugal too. And there's not compared to the United States, not compared to what we live with every day here. And I live in a very, very safe place. I live in a very nice town. It's very small. It's very rural. There is very little crime here. And even we aren't immune to the violence in this country. A lot of it did have to do with the 2020 elections. I kind of got a little disenfranchised and just got that feeling of, I don't know, like helplessness, or the feeling that nothing I do is actually going to ever change anything because I'm just one person and I'm not enough. We made the decision to move in April of 2022, and then May of 22 is when Uvalde happened. And I had a kid that was in that grade that classroom that was targeted was in. And, you know, I couldn't sleep for like 4 days after that happened. It was really hard. We had like a 1.5 weeks of school left. To just put my kids on the school bus every morning. Part of it was for my kids, to get them away from a place where school shootings are relatively normal. I know they don't happen all the time. They don't happen every single day. But the fact that there's multiple school shootings every single year versus I think like two total. In like the recorded history of Portugal, there's been 2 school shootings, just 2. And one was really awful, and I'm very much aware that it could happen again, and I'm very much aware that it could happen again after we move, but I feel like making the move to Portugal decreases the odds of it happening significantly. In addition to that, I just don't really feel like this is a country that I want to raise my kids in anymore. It's just become too polarizing, and again, I'm aware that Portugal is not immune to that sort of thing either. It just feels a little bit more like almost like people care a little bit less about politics and a little bit more just about living their lives and being with their families over there. And maybe that's a false impression, maybe I'm just reading into things wrong, but ultimately I do feel like making the move is going to be better than what we are living with here. Another reason was, of course, financial. I mentioned that in the last video. Cost of living in Portugal is significantly less, especially where I live, which is a rather expensive area of the United States. That is, of course, looking outside of Lisbon, which we are. And quite frankly, I did not enjoy the 2020 election. I definitely do not want to be in the country for the 2024 elections. I felt like things kind of got a little extreme in 2020, and they're only going to get worse in 2024. And personally, I just would rather not be here for that. Sorry. And the last big reason, honestly, the reason why it was April when we came up with this plan to move was because where we lived in April, it was still like the dead of winter. It wasn't even like, oh, spring's around the corner. It's like, oh, we're having another 10-inch snowstorm. And I live in Minnesota. We had 189 inches of snow the winter of 2021 to 2022. It went well into April. We still had snow on the ground in May, and it was just too much. It's very cold here. It's very snowy. And I just started feeling like I was spending my entire winter moving snow from one place to another. Like I wasn't able to live. I wasn't able to enjoy what was happening around me. I was too busy moving snow. Here we get snow starting sometimes as early as October, and it goes, and we will have snow on the ground as late as May. In fact, there have been times I remember as a kid skiing at our local ski hill in May. In fact, sometimes you can ski at the ski hill and golf at the golf course on the same weekend, and they are right next to each other. So just being able to live in a place where we are worrying about other things and not worrying about how we're going to get out of our driveway in order to go to school or go to work in the morning was a really big priority for us when we were looking for a place to live. And frankly, having more sunlight will be a lot better for my mental health. I tend to have seasonal affective disorder, so like a little bit of depression in the winter time where I just start feeling really down and kind of hopeless and helpless. And I'm hoping that by moving to a place that has a lot more sunlight, that feeling won't hit me quite as hard. I'm sure with the lack of daylight hours still, which it's the same there as it is here, it will still kind of hit me a little bit, but I'm hoping that with the more access to sunlight during the day, I will feel a lot better. So for financial reasons, political reasons, safety reasons, weather reasons, those were all the reasons that we decided to leave the United States and move to Portugal. So now you have your answer on that, and we are just 8 days away from moving. I'm pretty much packed up and ready to go, and we just cannot wait to get going. Starting next week, starting the week after next week, I will be bringing you content from Portugal.
We left the United States and moved to Senegal, West Africa, a year and a half ago now, almost 2 years, and it's been the best decision living abroad. So the kids are on Christmas break, so we are at an Airbnb in an hour and a half outside the city, and it is beautiful. I'm about to give y'all the view. My husband is splashing like a whale in the water. Let's see. So we came out here with all 5 kids, hubby, my mom, the kids' grandma, our nanny, our cook, our good friend, and her son. But I say all that to say, sometimes the American dream is making your money in America, having your business, maybe working remotely, having your passive income streams, some real estate, some investments, and living in another country or on another continent. Don't limit yourself to feeling like your best life is only where you've grown up. Sometimes your best life is on the other side of the world. Sometimes your best life is a 10-hour flight away, okay? And you can always go back to the US, right? I go back and forth, but this quality of life, the experiences that I can have and that I can give my kids, it's not in America. At least not right now. At least not while the naked mole rat is in office. Yeah. Come on out here, guys. Come on.
I left the US 8 months ago, and something that shocked me is that nobody likes America except for Americans. And even a lot of Americans don't like America. When I learned that people have no interest in visiting the US, I was shocked because I thought, isn't the US one of the best countries in the world? But I think that's what they teach us in the US. People think Americans are loud, disrespectful, unruly, obnoxious, pretentious. One of my European friends said, I typically refuse to hang out with Americans, but you're all right. When Americans come to Japan, they're usually shocked that Japanese people don't speak a lot of English at all. And they'll say, why don't they speak English? But you're coming to someone else's country where they speak their language. Why don't you learn their language if you want to visit their country?
For some reason, we also have to measure everything differently. Feet, inches, miles, pounds, Fahrenheit.
A lot of people are now coming to the realization or asking themselves the same question. Is it time for me to leave the United States? For me, I realized this a while ago, 7 years ago, in fact, after I had an email answered by a very famous historian, Timothy Snyder, when I impulsively emailed to his academic work account a long essay after I finished reading his book, Black Earth and The Road to Unfreedom, how I thought the US was heading towards fascism, that everything was going to be bleak, and I see all these like pre-fascist formations happening, and is this do you think this too? Like, is this what's going down? And he responded several months later, in fact, with a message that basically was, yeah, I read your email and I didn't know how to respond to it, and it's been kicking around my head a while, but obviously, yeah, you were right. Like, this is all happening. That made me really pushed. It pushed me to think, I gotta go. I gotta go. So what I did was I started going on LinkedIn and to all the job websites, and I just set my job parameter locations to London, Berlin, Amsterdam, Paris, basically every major European capital, and looked for jobs that were in English. And I just looked and looked and looked and applied and applied and applied. And eventually I got something. And I got really lucky, and I was able to get the company to pay a little bit of money towards my relocation. And that's how I was able to get over. This is a point I should mention, is that if you are eligible to be a dual citizen, and depending on what your family heritage is, you might be able to still claim it a couple of generations down. You want to apply for that immediately, because just in case, it is always better to have a second passport. And on that point, Americans, most of you do not have a passport at all. You need to get one right now, because you need one of those to leave the country while you're still able to legally leave. So I had this new job, and now I lived in a new country, and this was really difficult. This was a hard thing. And the thing I would advise every single person to do once you move to a new country is you need to join a lot of local community organizations and political organizations, because this taps you immediately in to the lifeblood of the community, all the people that are out there doing things, and you will be there and you will immediately become absorbed into the world around you. The thing that is easiest to do when you move to a new place is to isolate yourself, especially if you're moving to a country that you don't speak the language properly. It is super, super easy to make yourself locked in your house like you're on your own personal lockdown. And that is very, very, very bad. You need to start getting out there immediately, make friends, join groups, start working on your language skills, because you can build a new community, a new place anywhere in the world. I firmly believe that. I've moved countries a few times. I don't come from a rich family. I literally sold all of my stuff to be able to afford to move over. And I've done that twice. It's really important to understand that you can move. It is possible. And if you feel like there is danger now, you are right. You should leave. I saw where the US was going about 7 years ago, and I made the move. And I am very, very happy about the decision I made. It is terrifying to see what's happening in the US, but it has only reaffirmed the choice to leave is what has kept me safe, especially as I've continued upon my political work, something that is being rapidly criminalized in the United States. How people survived the last fascist wave in Europe. The people that survived mostly the Holocaust and Nazi Germany and fascist Italy and all of the horrors that happened were those who fled across the ocean, who left to find themselves in the UK or the US or any number of other countries around the world, because we often forget that people left to all over. Those people survived the war. Many of those people also ended up being the ones to help rebuild after the fascist period. Those who remained often died, and that's the reality of it. So if you are able to leave, I highly advise you to leave. It will deprive the regime of your intelligence and labor and skills and weaken it just so much, but your safety is paramount. You can't fight to overthrow the regime if you are no longer there anymore because you've been disappeared off to a prison camp in El Salvador. That is what's happening right now. And if you're a group that's already being targeted, why would you stay right now? Unless you have the absolute iron to do whatever it takes to survive in the US and through a fascist period, through something that could be akin to what happened in Germany, please make the right choice. Start looking for jobs, applying for residencies, trying to get out. Figure out all the exits you can create, because soon you might not be able to. Soon you might not have time. Soon you might have a knock at the door. So take away that there are other amazing places in the world. It won't be home. It never will be. But it can be a new home, a second home, a place that you choose to make your life and live, one that could be even more beautiful than anything you had before, which is thankfully what happened to me. Finding friends and family, marriage, love, happiness, fulfillment, and knowing that most likely I will have a future. Just like my ancestors that had to flee before had a future. Because those who flee often are the ones that survive. And I would like you to survive. Now, my position isn't the only one. You can also go over to the It Could Happen Here podcast and hear a very different take on this. I think they're both valid, but at the end of the day, I know which one I took, and that's all I can really speak to in this horrible occasion. And if you could do me a big favor, give some engagement, repost, do all the stuff, because for some reason the algorithm is really not liking me this week.